So a couple days ago, after the first appearance of Batman in the Arrowverse ever, I made a video going over what I think the timeline of Batman should look like based off what we already know so far, with certain things that I added that fit into the timeline. Now on that video, I got a lot of comments saying that I should maybe do the same thing with other heroes in the Arrowverse, namely Superman. I got a lot of comments saying I should do Superman, and I definitely will, but before I do, I wanted to do a character who, like Batman, has never really appeared other than just a cameo, has been referenced or even mentioned sometimes, but has never really appeared outside of the cameo role, and a character who should definitely have a fairly large role in the Arrowverse. That is, based off, you already saw the title in the thumbnail, but that is Green Lantern. Now, unlike Batman, Green Lantern is a legacy name. Batman has been used by other people, but it is mainly Bruce Wayne, while Green Lantern is Alan Scott, Hal Jordan, John Stewart, Guy Gardner, Kyle Rayner, Simon Baz, Jessica Cruz, and a new character who's now Teen Lantern named Kelly Quintella. All of these characters were humans who took over the role of Green Lantern or had a Green Lantern ring, and in this video I'll go over all of those people who have appeared in the Arrowverse, which at this point is Alan Scott, Hal Jordan, and even John Stewart. So with that in mind, let's begin the timeline, starting with the birth of Alan Scott. Alan Scott's existence is confirmed through his son, Obsidian. Obsidian was in his 20s in World War II, which means that Alan Scott was not, like in the comics, a member of the JSA and a fighter in World War II. Instead, he was probably a fighter in World War I, so that's something different about Alan Scott that had to be changed because of Obsidian, or because of Obsidian's role in the JSA. Now, this means that Alan Scott was around 18 years old when World War I started, so in the year 1914, I would say he's 18, which means that he was born in 1896, which was a very long time ago. Anyway, around the year 1913, Alan Scott is in a train wreck but is saved by something called a Starheart, which gives him a Green Lantern powers and a suit with a Green Lantern on it. Because of this, because of the Green Lantern symbol, he calls himself the Green Lantern. Now, he does never have a connection. He never has a connection to the Green Lantern Corps. Like in the comics, the Starheart is completely separate from the Green Lantern Corps. Like, it was created by the Guardians, but it doesn't really have anything to do with Green Lanterns. It's basically like a more primitive version of their technology, so he never has a connection to the Green Lantern Corps. However, he does become a hero using these powers. In the year 1914, Alan enlists in the military and is given the codename Green Lantern, and he helps the USA fight the German forces. Now, around the year 1920, Alan has a one-night stand with a woman named Rose Canton, who is the mother of Obsidian in the comics, so I'm going to do the same thing here. Alan was unaware that Thorn was a villain, but Alan does impregnate Rose, who ends up faking her death, and then later in the year 1921, she gives birth to Todd and gives him up to a foster family, and Todd is adopted by James and Shirley Rice. Later in the year 1939, Todd Rice becomes Obsidian and joins the JSA, and in 1975, or around that time, Alan Scott dies of old age, never knowing that he had a son, and the world never really knew about Green Lantern because he was kept secret by the US military, and after World War I, he didn't really do very much as Green Lantern. Alan Scott had absolutely no overlap with either of the other Green Lanterns, Hal Jordan or John Stewart, because he died before either of them were born. However, from this point on in the video, there will be a lot of overlap between these two characters. I'll basically flip-flop between them because I'm not going over each individual timeline. I'm going off the timeline of both of them at the same time. Now, typically Hal Jordan is either older or definitely more experienced than John Stewart. However, in this universe, he is definitely going to be more experienced as a Green Lantern, but he is going to be slightly younger because John Diggle, who will later become John Stewart, or is going to become John Stewart, is confirmed to have been born in 1977. I don't think that Hal Jordan should be that old. I think that he should maybe be around the same exact age as Oliver Queen. So John Diggle is born in the year 1977, and then in 1983, his father dies, and then in the year 1985, his mother remarries to a man named Roy Stewart. Roy would become John's stepfather, as well as his brother Andy's stepfather, and his mother and his stepfather never told him, or Andy, that his father died because of a very stupid decision that cost the lives of a lot of other soldiers, which that was the case. In that same year, 1985, Hal Jordan is born as well, which means that he's 8 years younger than John Stewart or John Diggle, but still you'll see that he is definitely more experienced, at least as a Green Lantern, however not necessarily as a vigilante. In the year 1995, when Hal Jordan is 10 years old, his father, Martin Jordan, dies in a test pilot accident. At this point, Hal Jordan decides that a test pilot is what he wants to be in the future to carry on his father's legacy, confirming that he is pretty fearless, as he just saw his father die in the exact same thing that he now sets out to do when he is an adult. Anyway, a couple years after that, in the year 2003, John Diggle joins the military, and in the year 2005, as he's on his second tour through Afghanistan, he meets a woman named Lila Michaels and later gets married to her. But when they finish this tour, they get divorced, as they couldn't really keep their marriage going without a war to fight, and John circles back into the military for a third tour in that very same year. In that same year, Hal Jordan begins his career as a test pilot for Ferris Air, where he meets their owner, Carol Ferris, and then a couple years later, maybe like around 2007, Hal begins to date Carol and they begin a relationship. It's already been confirmed that around the year 2008, John Diggle was honorably discharged from the military as he retired and joined personal security with his brother Andy. That was in the year 2008, but then a year after that, 2009, Deadshot is hired by Hive to kill Andy, or to at least try to fake his death. Deadshot thinks he killed Andy, but Hive did fake his death as Andy begins to work for Hive. This all brings us to 2010, the only time we ever get to see Hal Jordan, at least chronologically. This scene was released in the year 2015 as a part of the Arrow Season 4 flashbacks in the very first episode. In this episode, in the flashbacks, obviously set in 2010, Oliver Queen is in Coast City because he returned from Lian-yu, actually after that Hong Kong, and he didn't want to return to Starling City to infect the people in his life with darkness, so he just goes to Coast City and becomes a vigilante. He meets up with Amanda Waller in a bar, but one of the people there is Hal Jordan, so this doesn't really mean anything for Hal Jordan's timeline, but I think it is cool, and it's something to mention, not only because this is the first time we ever got to see Hal Jordan, but it's also, it's cool because this means that Green Lantern and Green Arrow, or the Green Arrow and the Green Lantern of the future, were in the same room at the same time in the year 2010. In the year 2012, when Arrow Season 1 takes place, John Diggle is hired to work personal security for Oliver Queen. Later that year, he learns that Oliver Queen is the Hood, and after a little bit of hesitation, he does end up joining his crusade and is a part of it for a very long time. In the year 2013, Hal Jordan, a test pilot for Ferris Air, goes missing in a test flight. This could have happened really any time between the year 2010 and 2015, but I put it in 2013 because it's really right there in the middle, but also because it's exactly 100 years after Alan Scott became Green Lantern, so because of that, I think that was a really cool detail to add, or would be. So 100 years after Alan Scott becomes the first human Green Lantern, Hal Jordan becomes the second human Green Lantern, and also the first human to ever join the Green Lantern Corps. So the whole thing where he's brought to Abin Sur, who's dying, and he gives him his Green Lantern ring, and then he then is swept away into space to go to Oa. That all happens in the year 2013. Also, Hal arriving on Oa and meeting the Guardians of the Universe and being trained by Kilowog and Sinestro all begins in that year as well. In the year 2013, Lila Michaels gets a lead on Deadshot and she goes to Russia. She ends up in a prison, which John Diggle, Oliver Queen, and Felicity Smoke go to save her, and this is when John Diggle and Lila Michaels get back together, and they eventually get married in 2015. Also, probably should mention, forgot to, that John Diggle and Lila Michaels had a son together in the year 2014. They had a daughter, but then she was changed to a son because of Flashpoint, but yeah, they did have a son, and they still do at this point. Something that I realized during the research for this video, specifically where I would put Sinestro in the timeline, I learned that he has some sort of connection to the antimatter universe, as after he was ratted out to the Guardians by Hal, they rid him of his Green Lantern ring, and then they banish him to Quard, which is in the antimatter universe, which is actually where the Anti-Monitor is from. So because of that, I think it's a good idea to make it so that that whole storyline, where Hal finds out that Sinestro has been using his abilities to rule over the people of his planet, and then he tells the Guardians, and they rid Sinestro of his ring and imprison him on Quard. So all happened before, really anywhere between the year 2013 and 19, and then because of Crisis on Infinite Earths, Sinestro is freed along with the rest of the Yellow Lantern Corps. So just for the sake of this timeline, let's say that in the year 2015, while Hal is still being trained by Sinestro and Kilowog, during some sort of mission, he learns that Sinestro has been using his abilities to rule over the people of his planet, and so on and so forth. So right now, Sinestro currently is creating the Yellow Lantern Corps on Quard, and is going to be released in the year 2019 because of the Crisis. In that very same year, Hal finishes his training and is tasked with guarding Sector 2814. Now there's some sort of question about why Green Lantern was never mentioned before. This is why I made it so that he doesn't return to Earth until after the Flash, or Barry Allen becomes the Flash, because before the Flash appeared, it didn't seem like people had any knowledge about superpowers whatsoever, and after the Flash appeared, if then there's some rumors of this green flying guy in Coast City, it wouldn't be as crazy, so that's why I made it so that Green Lantern first debuted after the Flash did. So in the year 2015, Hal Jordan returns to Earth and returns to Coast City. I don't really know what would happen with Carol Ferris. Honestly, I don't know if they got married in the past or engaged or something, if they broke up. It doesn't really matter for the timeline. I guess for the sake of consistency, I would say that they were still together, not married or engaged, but they were together when Hal went missing in the year 2010. But now that he returns, obviously the relationship is going to be pretty rocky because she thought that he was dead. Also in 2015, John Diggle, after a couple years of being on Team Arrow, finally gets a mask, not a very good one, but a mask either way, and gets the codename Spartan, becoming a superhero. Then, over the course of 2017 to 2019, a lot of big things happened to John Diggle. Specifically, in the year 2017, he's caught in a Lianu explosion. This gives him nerve damage, which gives him a tremor in his hand. John then takes over the mantle of Green Arrow for a couple of weeks, which isn't exactly significant for his Green Lantern timeline, except for the fact that it's interesting that the Green Lantern, the future Green Lantern, became the Green Arrow for a couple of weeks, which maybe he really, after that, wanted to be a hero, at least with some green in him. Anyway, in the year 2018, Curtis Holt gives John a chip that cures his nerve damage, and in the year 2019, this is the big Green Lantern year for John Diggle, or John Stewart. John Diggle learns that his biological father was not a person who sacrificed himself, and that's why he died. He died because he made a stupid decision, and this cost the lives of many of his fellow soldiers. And then, because of this, he starts to see his stepfather, Roy Stewart, as his true father, because Roy did raise him and was there his entire life. So after this is something that didn't happen yet in Arrow, but I would say that John changes his last name to Stewart, and after that, probably either a little bit before the crisis or during it, John Stewart becomes the Green Lantern. Some other things that we know are going to happen in 2019 is that John Diggle and Lila Michaels will adopt the son of Bronze Tiger Connor Hawke. That'll probably happen in Arrow Season 8, so it's just a matter of time, but that does mean it's probably 2019. Another thing that's going to happen is that Lila Michaels will become Harbinger during Crisis or right before Crisis on Infinite Earths. Either she's been the Harbinger this entire time and working with the Monitor this entire time, or she just becomes the Harbinger now. I would prefer if she was the Harbinger this entire time, because not only does this mean that Crisis has been set up since the very beginning of the Arrowverse, meaning Arrow Season 1, because of Lila's appearance, but also it ties everything together. It's just way cooler. So because of that, in this timeline, it's basically canon to this timeline of mine that Harbinger has been working with the Monitor this entire time. But this does mean that currently, 2019, Hal Jordan is Green Lantern, operating mostly in Coast City, but also all around the sector. Alan Scott was Green Lantern for a while and is dead, and John Diggle currently is doing the steps, or going through the steps to become John Stewart and a Green Lantern. However, after Crisis on Infinite Earths, after Hal Jordan helps the heroes and John Stewart becomes Green Lantern and helps the heroes also fight the Anti-Monitor, Sinestro is freed from Quard, and he wages war with the Yellow Lantern Corps against the Green Lantern Corps, which John Stewart and Hal Jordan obviously help out quite a lot. So that is what I think the Arrowverse's timeline of all the Green Lanterns so far, Alan Scott, Hal Jordan, and John Stewart, should look like between the years 1896 and 2020. And obviously I took nothing from the alternate versions of Green Lantern, like the John Stewarts of Earth 90 and the Smallville universe, which are both Green Lanterns, because those are alternate universes and they would have no influence on the main universe unless they have some sort of interaction, which up until now the Green Lanterns have not. So that is the Green Lantern timeline of the Arrowverse from those years and what I think they should look like. Obviously, after 2020, characters like Guy Gardner, Kyle Rayner, and the rest of the human Green Lanterns would probably become Green Lanterns some point down the line, but as of right now, Hal Jordan and John Stewart are Green Lanterns, and Alan Scott used to be. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about this timeline and what you would change about it and what you would add. Let me know in the comments down below, and if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.